Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zatlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, your audio quality is so good today. It carries so well. If only we could figure that out for your video quality, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we can only have one or the other. So I'm sure once we get the camera going, there'll be something wrong with my mic. You just again, technology is our worst enemy. So, but we'll
I
we'll
feel
get
like it's
through it.
your worst enemy. I'm actually
Yeah,
amazing at it. Not, it's not true at all.
yeah. I will take the full brunt on that there. Um, we normally have some like outside topic to talk about, but I really don't feel like there's that much like
No,
going on besides like us just crafting the rankings in the world. Like, would
no,
you agree with that?
I know. There's really. I was actually wondering the same thing. I got on here. I was like, what are we going to talk about? And now what we're doing is we're talking about what we're going to talk about.
We're,
That's it.
we're getting real meta here.
Yeah.
So before we go any further, we'll just mention the old standby of ratings and reviews. I don't think we got any new ones from last week.
No.
After a good week last week, we are stagnant again on Apple and Spotify. Make sure you leave a rating and review there. Subscribe on YouTube. Leave some comments there if you have any questions. But with that out of the way, today we are going to start talking about, or begin,
Well,
or continue
actually,
rather,
Ben,
our
can I
yes,
interrupt
yes,
you? I'm so sorry. I apologize. Can we actually start with Judy Ki to Clemson?
yes. Go ahead.
Okay, let's start with that. I could just again, I kind of forgot that that was a thing. Judy Ki, one of the biggest transfer targets in the
Yep.
nation. I think there was a lot of speculation that she would end up at a handful of schools. But she's a 407 runner for 1500 meters, 201 for 800 meters, and a cross country All American. She's instead headed to Clemson. And Ben, I have a question here, okay? That and I want you to really think this through because at first glance you're going to be like, "Well, that's a ridiculous question." But think this through. Who is the bigger winner here?
Mm.
Is it Clemson for getting Judy Ki, or is it South Carolina, the school she left, because now she's not in an SEC school that we are almost certain she is going to?
Oh, that's an interesting point. Probably South Carolina, just because
Yeah.
I probably would have said that the school that she went to if she was going to a program that was ready to compete in cross country. But that is not really Clemson, and so I think that makes this uh, transfer a little confusing. On the track, it does make sense. She's going to be able to run with Gladys Chepnogorich. Um, uh, but it just seems like she's not going to be able to provide as much value to Clemson as she could have provided a lot of other programs in terms of pushing some of the like cross country programs over the edge in terms of podium quality or top 10. It's that's not going to be the case at Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, even with Chip McGettish right by you, that's going to be an incredible one-two punch.
Yeah.
Like I'm questioning like if the ACC has a better one-two punch, and I'm not confident that they do. I mean, NC State maybe somehow, but I don't know what that. I guess
Yeah.
maybe Stanford with Bunnage and whoever. Um,
Yeah.
but it's that's probably the best one-two punch. And I will say this: I think from like a where she could have maximized the value. Yeah, like the team aspect of cross country is certainly where she could have really bolstered some team out there. Clemson, they still won't be quite nationally competitive, frankly, even with her addition. But from like a skill set perspective, it's a beautiful pairing. It's
Sure.
perfect, actually. The 800-mile middle distance focus that Clemson has so obviously pursued over the years, and a cross country All American who was pretty much, she's pretty much identical to Gladys Chepnogorich. The only difference is that she's Gladys Chepnogorich is a 159 800-meter runner, so slightly better turnover, whereas Kosgei is probably a slightly better cross country runner and a little bit better over 15. Um, So I think from like a skill set fit perspective, I really, really, really like that a lot.
Yeah. On the track, it makes a lot of sense, and I think those two getting to train with each other, I'm sure that had some appeal to Kazgai too, to be able to train with Jepnigenich and have someone that you know is going to be able to push you in workouts, someone you're going to be able to race with and race off of. Yeah, and obviously Clemson has done a great job of churning out ACC 800-meter champions, and I think she can obviously grow a lot in a program that has that capability. So yeah, huge pickup for Clemson because I mean Kazgai was arguably the top, if not the top name, one of the top names on the portal. And with her eligibility and her just versatility across the board, she was going to be a massive win for whoever got her.
Correct. I agree. Last question before we move on to the rankings. On a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you when you initially saw that she went to Clemson?
Like a 7. Like
Seven. I'd say seven.
I was pretty surprised. Like it's while we've said it does fit in terms of what Clemson is good at on the track and what Kazgai is good at. I just imagined her going to a little bit more of a established powerhouse program on the track and cross country side.
Yeah, Clemson is still really good on the
You
track.
know, exactly.
Yeah, but the cross country aspect is certainly where they falter a little bit. Okay, cool. Let's move off of that. And I interrupted you, so now going back to the original discussion that we had here, XC top 50 rankings. Ben, take it away.
Absolutely. So we talked about some of our hardest to rank names last week, and this week we are going to be talking about the men and women that were in our honorable mention, just missed, and 41 to 50 ranking spots. So we're going to kind of go through and ask each other who got robbed, who was hard to assign a ranking to, who do we feel like maybe has the most upside, and just kind of walk through a couple different names. As we kind of dissect how we put these rankings together. Now, if you want to see the whole list of these rankings and see all the men and women, because we're not going to be able to get to all of them, check that out on thestridereport.com. Go and subscribe, and you'll be able to see all of those along with the rest of our top 50 as we release those. So, with that said, I think that the most fun question to start with for these rankings, and this is what everybody goes to immediately whenever you put out a ranking list. Who got robbed in terms of not making our top 50?
I think you and I are on the same page. I think probably Mike and Finn are probably on the same page as us. Let's do the 3, 2, 1 countdown, okay? And we'll say it together. 3, 2, 1. Cale
Grotenhuis.
Yeah, there we go. I love Cale Grotenhuis. I want him to be my best friend. I really do. but it was so hard. I mean, we sat there for 30 minutes, 20
Yep.
minutes. I mean, it was. We tried to find every possible way we could to get Cale Grotenhuis of Northern Arizona onto into our rankings. The problem is this: he was great on the track this past spring, 13:38 for 5K, 28:30s I want to say for 10K. Made it to the national meet in both of those events. Was ninth in the 5K. He's clearly at a level of fitness that is so much better. The problem, however, is he has one cross country race on his TFRS profile. One, and it's if you were being fair, if we're removing bias, we have to look at everything at an objective level and say, look, if you just don't have cross-country results and you're not even an All-American, trying to then crack the list becomes increasingly harder.
And we were comparing him with teammate Corey Gorgas a lot, who did end up making our rankings. And Gorgas, he has so much more just of a background in cross country. He has a lot more races to look at, and they're very good at results. But then you compare like him to Grotenhuis on the track, and it's like, well, he's just not as good. And does that mean he's not like his fitness isn't as good, or maybe is he not as good of a track runner? It seemed impossible for me to like say who's going to have the better season moving forward. I think Gorgas is the safer choice because we've seen him actually do it on the grass. But like I think you can make a pretty compelling argument that Grotenhuis is going to be like NAU's what, third or scorer this year, possibly
Well, think
fourth.
about it. They've got Santiago Prosser. They've got David Malarkey, right? And then it depends on how you feel about
That and
Colin
that's and
Sullivan,
that's why
who,
I'm saying I think after
right?
that it's a discussion, third or fourth.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not ready to go third yet. I guess I go. Okay, so you know what? How about this? What's his ceiling
I think he's
in
an
our
all
rankings? Well, in our rankings, what's his
in
ceiling?
our like yeah. I think he can eventually be a top 35 guy at the end of the year,
Yeah, that's fair.
which I think, I mean, on this NAU team, I think is top three possibly.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's plenty realistic. Okay, let's we can wax poetic about Caleb Grotenhuis. I'm sorry, Cal. I really wanted you. I really wanted him to get in. We tried. On the women's side, who was the name that you felt got robbed?
There's like two names that I really wish we would have found spots for. Do you? I think you can probably guess one of them. You want to give it a shot?
I usually can read you like a book. This one's a little tougher. I think you're talking about Sophie O'Sullivan.
Yes. Yep. She was one of them. I really think it's the talent, right? I think that she certainly belongs in our rankings just based off of her top end talent. She's obviously a great 1500-meter miler. And then the other name I had, same kind of vein, Shannon Flockhart.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
she's good enough. And I mean, you look at the women that are ahead of her, and I think I could make an argument of around one or two of them that O'Sullivan and Flockhart are ahead of, but it's not like an overwhelming argument. So I don't feel like they were truly robbed, but it just kind of blows my mind that we're at a point in the NCAA and it's this deep where those two women can be left off, and it feels like not a wildly incorrect decision.
I flat out believe that O'Sullivan like was robbed, right? At least with Kale, I could like justify it.
Yeah,
I could like be like, okay, like but here's the reason why X, blah 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 blah. I think O'Sullivan was completely robbed. 15th at Virginia Invite, 65th at Nuttycombe, 6th at Pac-12s, 56th at the national meet. It's the national meet in Nuttycombe that I think maybe some people get a little bit caught up on. But
yeah,
my opinion is that if you're 6th in the Pac-12 and 15th at Virginia Invite, and you're a 402 1500-meter runner who
yeah.
ran 405 in the summer, I thought she was robbed. I thought she should have gotten in, and like this one is actually like the one that like I was overruled on by the other writers.
Yeah, and I think I would have been on your side because I think looking at the bottom five in our rankings, I think almost all of those women, except for maybe one, I would have put O'Sullivan over.
Yeah, and I know it's probably this one, right?
Yeah, and maybe
Yeah,
even two down from that as well. But yeah,
yeah. Okay, we're on the same
it's
page. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think, and we kind of talked about her a little bit in our hardest to rank as well. So we don't have to get too much deeper into that. Was there another name in there besides O'Sullivan that you thought kind of got robbed a little bit?
Brenda Two-Way,
Yeah,
of
that was a
Alabama.
tough
I
one.
think you can very clearly see her talent. Like I
Hmm.
think there's no denying that she's super talented, she has raw talent, and that she's going to probably be better over the longer distances. But we haven't seen it yet. And her cross country, her track results, excuse me, well, good, weren't exactly like, oh my God, good, right? And so we can be like, no, but the eye test says this all day, all we want. But without anything to actually point to on paper,
Yeah.
and with 2 track seasons now gone, to be like, we don't really have enough. It is a hard one to justify leaving off, but we just don't have anything.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Out of the men that ended up in our honorable mention, who do you think has the best chance at being an All-American this year?
Oh, I love this question. In our honorable mention,
Yes.
this is so hard. Oh my gosh. Dean Casey of Tennessee.
Interesting. Okay, so why do you feel he has a little bit more upside than some of the rest of these guys?
Well, I think when you talk about eye test, like he kind of passes the test. He came in with
Sure.
really strong pedigree from overseas, was already running top tier times over the longer distances before he got to Tennessee. And then, he gets to Tennessee and he had some really solid results. Like he was just a freshman last year and he was, let me drop down, he was 8th at pre-nationals. So 8th at pre-nationals, that got you a win over guys like Nicholas Russell, Gary Martin, Gabe Sanchez, Matthew Rickman, Will Anthony, Ben Perrin's another notable one. So I thought that was really solid. He was 11th at SECs, 11th in the South region. And yeah, he didn't have a great national meet, but then he goes on to run 28:39 on the track. He's still learning. And I just think the talent is so apparent. It's just a matter of refining him and getting to the point of, hey, you can be an All-American. So
Yeah. I think this year is going to be a year early in terms of who would I want on this list moving forward.
yeah.
I think he's like for next year, he's probably number one for me. Just because, yeah, like you said, he has the pedigree, and you can see that there's so much more room to grow. Even though he's already hit the ground running in the NCAA. For me, I
Who's
think
your
it's Brian Masai. I
one?
just think first year in Arkansas's program, I think there's going to be a little bit of a bump, just naturally as he's running with some guys that he hasn't before. It's going to be highly competitive practices. Arkansas is going to be should be really good this year. I mean, he's flashed the All American type of talent on the track. You just got to translate it to the grass, and I think there's a good chance that he puts that together this season.
You agree that he's in the right spot at honorable mention, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, because he just hasn't proven it on the grass like as much. Like
Yeah, for
you
those
can't put
wondering.
him there yet.
Yeah, for
But
those
I do
wondering.
like I in terms of like looking at these 10 names, who do I think has like the highest upside? I think it's clearly him.
Well, that's a different question
Well,
then.
I guess highest upside and best chance of being All American. I
Okay,
think
because most
that's
likely and highest upside are
yeah.
different. And for the record, Masai was 3rd at the MAC XC Championships and 41st at Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Was the Great Lakes thing probably a fluke? Probably yes. But also, like, if you're going to be top 50 name, you should be winning the name.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't disagree with that at all. On the women's side, same question. Who do you have honorable mention, best chance at being an All American?
I'll go Lily Murphy of Penn.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like that was kind of the name that was sticking out to me as well.
yeah, I am not really the biggest fan of saying like, well, these track times are going to translate. I don't know why. I just really, really like Lily Murphy. She was a breakout star on the track this past year. She ran what? She ran 15:51 for 5K, 32:40 for the 10K. Qualified for the national meet, didn't run well, but she has some cross country success. She was 11th at pre Ivy League championships. She was 20th at the Mid Atlantic region, and then she truly broke out in the spring.
Yeah,
I think it's just so apparent that her fitness has elevated to a new level, and Yeah, I just think it's so overwhelmingly clear.
Yeah, we have a lot of names like her on both the men and women's side where it's like they've broken out over the last 6 months, but we don't really know how that translates to the grass yet. And I'm betting that it does. I again think we have her in the right spot just because we haven't seen it, but the fitness has improved to the point where she should be at least in contention. The other name that I had was Riley Chamberlain.
Mm,
I just I like the top end flashes that we saw from her throughout the track season. She's still got a ways to go, but if she can kind of like bottle that improvement that she showed, and you're looking at a BYU team that's going to be so much better this fall, and if she's running in that pack that's going to be in that top 40 range, I think all of a sudden she's going to give herself a pretty good shot at being in that group in that range.
so who would you hire on this fall, Murphy or Chamberlain?
I think Murphy, and I think she's kind of like the safer bet in terms of like I think she could I would honestly be kind of surprised if she didn't finish the season higher in our rankings than where she started. Whereas Chamberlain, I'm not quite as sure on, but I do like her potential a lot as well.
Okay, okay, I can get behind that. I don't think I'm quite as high on Chamberlain as maybe you are, but I think it's more just because I we have such high expectations for her, right?
Yes,
And it's almost unfair.
yeah.
Um, so, all right, let's. I want to transition to the actual rankings here. Who's the one name in the 50 to 41 range, excuse me, that you're like, we perfectly nailed this ranking. This is the perfect, like, we're so good at this. We're really good. What is that name that you're like, we got this down?
Oh, and this is a tough group to have this
Yeah.
question for. Like,
I
ask me
know.
this when we're talking like 21 to 30 because I'll feel much more comfortable about that. I'm gonna go with Gable Sepierda
Mm,
of
okay.
Iowa State. I think we have him in a very good spot, respecting the improvement that we saw uh, over the steeplechase, while also not kind of getting ahead of ourselves, which I think a lot of other rankings will do with steeplechase talents.
Agreed.
And I think we have him in a pretty solid spot going into the fall, but he is someone that again, a lot of these guys on this list, there's a lot of volatility here. Like I think looking at 41 through 50, especially on the men's side, you could see them kind of going 10 to 15 spots one way or the other by the end of the season, just because there is a lot of variability there.
Yeah, and I think people forget like Cy Pierda was really good in the fall of 2021. He
Yes.
was eighth at GRIAC, he was 21st at Nuttycombe, eighth at the Big 12 championships, and then 41st at the national meet. He was also 43rd, I want to say, last year, albeit not as good of a regular season or lead up to that. Um, but you, but he's super experienced. He's had success before. And now he's elevated his fitness to now where he's what, an 825 steeplechaser. The consistency leading up to the national meet is admittedly not great, and that's why he's at where he's at. But I really, really thought that I agree with you. I thought we were able to properly mediate between, hey, your lead up to some of these national meets could have been a lot better. Your last great season was back in 2021, but you just ran 825, got bronze at the national meet, and oh, by the way, you're often really good at the national meet. So, um, yeah, I think that's a great answer. For me, I think it's a guy who we've already kind of mentioned, but I'm going to say him anyways. It's Corey Gorgas.
Yeah.
I think Gorgas is appropriately ranked in this range. You guys can go find out where he is ranked. But as I go down and try to find his profile, he's a guy who has like a bunch of really solid and steady and like great performances. He's not quite like if you go back and look at his resume, he was 25th at the Virginia Invitational last fall, 33rd at Nuttycombe, 5th at Big Sky, which I'm frankly just not looking too much into, and then 62nd at the national meet. I think that's a fair, like, hey, this guy's probably a top 50 name. He's super reliable, extremely consistent. He may not get you a super high ceiling, but he has a seemingly pretty high floor. And I think people just like that can probably be rewarded and boosted into our rankings in this exact range that we're talking about.
Yeah, he was number 2 on my list for this question, just because I think there's a lot less variability with him. I don't think he necessarily has like top 30 upside, and I would be shocked if he kind of fell out of that top 60. Like
Yeah.
I think he's just very in a very solid spot, that being like a fringe All-American in a lot of ways. So yeah, really like where we have him. On the women's side, I'll have you go first. Who do you think we nailed on the 41 to 50 range?
I hate this question. I think some people are going to disagree with me. I think we got Emily Covert correct.
I don't think there's an incorrect or a correct answer with her.
Fair enough. The pedigree's there. Everyone knows. Two-time All-American. Yes, she hasn't been back at top form, but she's still been really good. Like, I think people forget that she was, 50th last year at the national meet? And before that, she was having even some better performances prior. So she was like 42nd at Nuttycombe, which is okay, fine. 12th at Pac-12s, which is fine, I guess, solid, I guess. But 5th at the Virginia Invite. And to me, when you get 5th at the Virginia Invite and then 5th at the national meet, and you're still running well enough to be at least competitive, I think that is enough where if we know your pedigree and we know what your upside is, yeah, let's put her in the 50 to 41 range while we try to truly determine where she's at. So I think given the circumstances, this is probably a fair ranking.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be an easier question on the women's side than the men's, but it really isn't. It is very tough. Like a lot of these women, I think you have compelling cases for one way or the other, and Covert, I think, represents that. You spelled out the case for why she certainly, in my mind, deserves to be in our rankings. I just think that there's some higher upside for her that made it a little bit harder to land on a specific spot. For me, I think and again, this was a woman that was extremely hard to rank. I think we landed in a perfect spot with Solana
Oh,
Yildiz.
interesting. Okay.
I very hard to rank her. She hasn't shown a ton in cross country. She was 7th at SECs, 11th at the Southeast Regional this past year. Transfer when she was running for South Carolina, goes to Oregon, shows some incredible versatility, running 15:15 in the 5K, 4:09 in the 1500. Those track times would indicate a ranking a little bit higher than where we have her, but I think based off of what we've seen from her on the grass, which is fine, it's just not like All-American level. I think we landed in a really good spot, rewarding her track performances while not getting over our skis too much.
Yeah, I think all things considered, this was probably a really solid ranking for her. I think this is probably going to be one that we get a lot of pushback on, and I just know how it's going to happen. But let's just be blunt: she was not good in the postseason, and it
No.
was the 5K. She just flat out struggled, and she was just not great. And that's kind of something that you remember. I remember when the scratch reactions came out and we were doing that podcast,
Right.
and you're like, oh, I love this for them and them. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine with Elmore. I can get behind Elmore. But Yildiz has experience in that 5K, and it shows, right? Now, at the same time, go back and look at the list of all the women who have run 15:15 or
Yeah.
faster for 5K. It's a pretty incredible list. And so it's a matter of like, okay, meet in the middle, reward her, give her a solid ranking. Let's see if she can fully translate it, but it would be almost irresponsible to leave a 15:15 girl out of our rankings.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. next question I had for you, and this can be for anyone 41 or lower on our rankings, or not even in our rankings.
I think I know what you're
Who
going to ask. Go ahead.
who is the man or woman, and woman? We'll do one of both. Who you most want on your team next year?
Oh, great question. I love that question. That's such a good question. Oh, that's such a good question. Next year. Oh, that is such a brutal question. CJ Singleton of Notre Dame. And I will not even say where he's at. I thought he showed unbelievable maturity this past spring.
Mm-hmm.
I think he showed a couple flashes of like really promising cross country
Yep.
performances. He was a redshirt freshman last year, still a ton of upside. My fellow PA guy, it's I really like Singleton. I think he's going to be like a super reliable. I could see him being like a souped up Corey Gorgas like in the future.
Yeah. No, I absolutely could see that. I mean, yeah, he's shown more, I think,
Mhm.
at this point of his career than Gorgas did. And so yeah, I hear you on that. For me, I think I'm going to stick in the ACC and go with Will Anthony.
Okay.
I like the progression that we've seen out of him. He's a junior. He's got one more year left. I think he's someone that we could be talking about. Now, I don't think he has like super crazy high upside. I don't think he's going to be someone where like next year, oh man, we like pencil him into our top 25. But I
You don't
think
think so?
he's what?
You don't think so?
Maybe. I think he has the yeah, maybe he has the potential. Maybe I'm underselling him, but I do think he's like almost certainly going to be an All American next year, which I don't know how many other guys on this list, especially since there's a lot of seniors on this list, that you can necessarily say that about.
So, what percent chance would you give him to be an All American this year?
This year, I think he's like 60%. Well, no, that's a
60?
little high. I'll go
Think it's
50,
high?
50%.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's about right.
And then next year,
Yeah.
I think it should be like 70-ish%. Like
Okay.
I feel pretty good about that.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's good. I also like Will Anthony, but he's a Virginia guy, so like I was not gonna select a Virginia guy as a Virginia Tech alum. I couldn't do it. Um, anyways, women. Who was the name that you want for the long term?
I want, and I'm making sure that she's yes. I want Sophia Kennedy. I think
Yeah,
another
yeah.
year in her belt. I think she's someone that could kind of break out this year, and we're talking about her as like clearly an All American, not only an All American, but someone who's like comfortably in that range this year. And next year, I think we could be talking about a top 20 name pretty comfortably.
I'm not gonna say Lily Murphy again, but fair. Man, this is hard. I'm gonna go with Ashley Jones of Tennessee. I think I think she showed what she can do. Um, Last year, I think the national meet was great. It was a kind of like a glimpse. I think this will be a year where she kind of replicates that just on a more consistent basis and puts it all together. But by the time then she's a senior. Am I looking at yeah? By the time she's a senior, I could see her being like flirting with the top 30 kind of thing.
Yeah, she's an interesting one, and I really struggled to rank her. I mean, that whole Tennessee team from last year was a challenge. The way
Yeah,
that
they
they
were.
postseason so well is like is that a true representation of who they are, or was the beginning of the season like more accurate? Is there some kind of middle ground? I think if she continues at this trajectory, I think she's probably quite clearly the right choice for next year.
Yeah, it's that team. Like I struggled when we talked about her. I struggled ranking Jones or trying to find a right spot for her, and the Tennessee women trying to rank them for this upcoming fall,
It's gonna be
I'm
awful.
I'm petrified. Like I'm terrified. I know I have no idea where we're gonna put them. Zero clue. No
If
idea.
I have to be a tiebreaker, I'm not gonna be happy about it. You guys need to figure that out.
Well, you're lucky that we have 2 extra D1 writers this season, so you're maybe off the leash, maybe, unless they effectively create the tie. Um, my next question here for the men and women, of course, who do you just irrationally like? Who's just like you're like that's my guy, that's my that's the runner I'm following this season. Who is that?
Oh man, I like a lot of these guys on this list. Hmm, 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 hmm. I'm gonna go with Matt Strangio. I
Okay.
was pretty I was pretty high on him in terms of pushing him higher than where we had him initially. I think he has his track times are just super elite. I mean, I remember what was it? Wasn't this past the Olympic trials, but this past U.S. The year before U.S. championships, and all of a sudden you just see Matt Strangio popping up in all these races, and I mean, for someone that got as little airtime probably across all the different publications, like he's was just there alongside like all the other guys that you would expect to be at US championships on the collegiate level. Now he's got to put it together on the grass a little bit better and be a little bit more consistent. But I just think he hangs around and is just it deserves to be in a little bit of a better class than I think we normally associate him with.
Fair. Um, yeah, I for me, I just need more on the grass.
Yeah,
I
well, it's
just need
just
more.
again, it's this is why it's the
Yeah, it's
irrational.
irrational. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's irrational. Although it's hard to be irrational with like what a 737,
yeah,
738, 739 3K runner. Like, yeah, when you're dipping under 740, like there's not you could just point to that and be like, nope, see, it's rational. It's like,
yeah.
gotcha. My name is Ben Rosa of Harvard. Um, I'm a huge Ben Rosa fan. I really, really liked his performances. I thought there was just so much potential from last fall. He was 60th at NuttyCon, which was good. Not amazing, but good. Then he was third at Ivy League championships. And you're like, okay, third's okay. But then look at the guys who he lost to, Graham Blanks and then Dylan Throop. Dylan Throop was going to be an All-American before he got injured. Then he beats Nicholas Benenson, who was an All-American. He beats
Mhm.
Acer Iverson. He goes off and goes on to beat like all of the Princeton guys outside of that. That was really encouraging. Then after he gets eighth at Northeast, 47th at the national meet. And to me, that was a complete season. Now, the track times and the track performances leave something to be desired, right? His highlight is a 28:43 10K from the Raleigh Relays, couldn't make it out of the East region, so on and so forth. That's not great. But I just really, really like Ben Rosa. I think he showed like what his potential is last year, and I hope he puts it all together this fall because I just irrationally like him, and I couldn't tell you why.
No, I think I can tell you why you like the flashes you've seen on the grass. And when we're
Yes.
talking about cross country rankings, like, hey, that's fine to put the priority on that 100%. All right, I gonna ask you again. Who do you think I have on the women's side? Because this is a pretty classic. Like, there's someone in here that
Ah,
I've talked about several times over the last year or two about liking a lot, probably more than consensus.
oh my gosh! I think I'm gonna get this. I want to double check. It's not someone we've already mentioned, right?
No, we haven't talked about her at all in this podcast, which is why I knew I had to figure out one category to put her in.
Is it Maggie Congdon?
No, no, no.
Oh no!
That's a good guess though. It is Siona Chisholm of Notre Dame.
Okay.
I have been so impressed by her since her freshman year when she just that ACC performance just is stuck in my brain for whatever reason when Notre Dame nearly took off NC State
Yep.
2 years ago. And she's had an up and down career in terms of she's shown some very strong flashes on the grass and on the track, but just hasn't quite put together a complete season in either. I gotta believe that with more experience under her belt, the talent has never really been a question. I just think she's going to take a step forward, and where we have her ranked is perfectly acceptable. But I just think she's going to be. This could be a year where where she just takes a huge step forward, is in a completely different tier. Even like midway through the season, we're talking about her completely differently.
Yeah, I think what you said about her talent, like no one's questioning her talent. Like she has some of the best like raw talent, some of the best upside probably of women in the nation. The problem is that there's just the lack of consistency at
Yeah,
times, and that's really important for us. And so I'm probably not as high on her as you are, although I think her upside is arguably just as good as anyone's relative to their where they're currently at, if that
yeah.
makes any sense.
Hmm.
So I see why you like her for sure. For me, I'm gonna go Sadie Sixstead. I'm gonna guess that the F is silent in there. Sadie Sixstead of Villanova. Really underrated cross country season last fall. She was
Yep.
8th at pre nationals, 4th at Big East, which Big East, let's not forget, was super top heavy. Was the Mid Atlantic champion, and then 71st at the national meet, which is arguably her like quote unquote worst performance, which is still pretty solid. Goes on to the track to run 15:44 over 5,000 meters, 32:45. Qualified for the outdoor national meet over 10K, where she finished 12th. I think she's now an experienced veteran. She clearly got way more comfortable. She established more consistency, and she showed us that she now has like that nationally competitive tier, right? Like as you saw that in her 10K performances this past spring, where she's not just like another name who's just happy to be there and then gets lost in the field kind of thing. So that's why I like Sadie Sixstead a lot.
Yeah, and she's kind of the classic runner that you just see pop up on results like almost all the time when you're just like, oh, well, yeah, like she's not necessarily one of the first five names I would have talked about or like highlighted, but she's like right there, like again and
Yep.
again and again, and you have enough of those solid performances that it starts to add up in your brain, and you realize what kind of talent she is. So yeah, I like that pick a lot. Is there? I don't think I have any other big questions. Do you have any more before we wrap up?
No, I think this was good. I think it was just a good enough like dangle the carrot there. You know,
Yeah,
I think that was good, and I don't think we gave away too much, but I still think we had some really really good discussion. So, so for anyone who is listening, go check out the site. We put in tons of time on these rankings, like tons and tons of time. So go check them out. Every name that gets ranked is going to have some analysis, and I'll also be doing some just missed analysis for those names as well. Go get a subscription. And I think that's all I have. Go rating and review as well. Subscribe on YouTube. But that's all I have.
absolutely. All right. Well, until next week, Garrett. I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.